Today's episode of the Baseline Scoop is brought to you by La Terrain Watches. Built and designed for watch enthusiasts, La Terrain watches are made to last with a careful selection of materials and components. This focus on detail from the design to your wrist provides their customers with a great watch at any price. Use promo code BLS10 for 10% off your watch.
Bobby's got control. It's 89-84. Sixers, and they get inside. Hanging underneath. He was fouled. Right side. Julius in the air. Ball to the right hand. Floating, reaching, and spinning it in. Oh, let's fly everything after that. Watch this fantastic move by the Doctor.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Baseline Scoop. I'm your host, Zach Ciavolella, here, of course, with my co-host, as always, Mr. Justin Crosby. Justin, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man. It's things are heating up, as they would say.
Yeah, we had the NBA draft. We're going to be going over a little bit of that in the Sixers' newest edition. A lot of news on the free agency market already, and what the hell's going on in Brooklyn? So there's a lot to talk about today. We'll be unpacking the De'Anthony Melton trade, the potential PJ Tucker signing, and a little Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving news as well. So a nice, solid show all the way around today. But why don't we start with the draft first, right? Obviously, it took place last Thursday. To get right into it, 23rd pick. We did our live draft show. All this affair and time waiting, talking about all the different potential prospects. Board wasn't really falling Philadelphia's way. Come towards 23. They select David Roddy, Colorado State, who I loved. I didn't necessarily love him at 23, but I loved him. He kind of reminded me of a PJ Tucker type. Super, big hustler, kind of a dog on both sides of the ball, undersized power forward. He had a little bit of the shot, good defensive intensity. He wasn't Tucker, but he had shades of that to his game. So they select David Roddy, and then they trade the pick. Danny Green and DJ Roddy. I keep calling it, where'd I get DJ Roddy from? David Roddy. Is there there might be some kind of DJ Roddy out there. David Roddy. That's DJ Roddy's his son, who may or may not be born yet. David Roddy, right? So David Roddy and Danny Green for De'Anthony Melton from Memphis, and I'll go into some of his numbers in a second. But Justin, what do you think about Melton? What do you think he brings to Philadelphia?
So when the draft went down, as you said, we were live. I was happy. I felt like first the way the board was falling, as you mentioned, that was the perfect thing to do. Now, would this have happened if say one of the guys they really wanted, quote unquote, fell to them? But the way
like
the board
Williams was there, for instance, or something like that.
Yeah, then they may have just taken a pick. But Melton, man, he just provides a influx of athleticism, hustle, energy, defense. He just provides all those things with the ability to, guard opposing guards as far as those matchups that maybe we only will have Matisse be able to guard. He could take on one of those matchups. I do remember a time where we had Matisse guarding Jason Tatum and Seth Curry guarding Jaylen Brown. Those days are over. So adding Melton brings that energy to it as well. He plays bigger than his size. His shot has gotten way better in the last 2 seasons, which goes to give you the confidence that he is a willing outside shooter, and he shoots a lot off the dribble. He shoots it off the catch. I just think it's an all-around great addition to the Sixers. He provides that third guard where, of course, you have Shake Milton. That was a third guard before, but now Melton's clearly going to be a third guard. You can play him with either Tyrese or James Harden, and you can play all three together. I know it seems small, like a small backcourt, but Melton plays way bigger than his size. And I can't harp enough on the athleticism that he will bring to the team. There's only 2 athletic guys on the team, maybe 3. So I feel like I'm excited. I think he brings that energy, that hustle, that extra grit, that energy that the guys need. Like on a random Wednesday night in DC in January when nobody has the energy, he's going to be the guy playing hard, jumping for diving for the loose balls, making those extra plays,
Mhm.
running down the court for the steals and dunking and stuff like that. And I think that's what this team absolutely needs.
Yeah, I mean, the theme of the offseason's been toughness and, to kind of take something from the Eagles, like a dog mentality. That's what's been preached since Joel Embiid, first shouted out right after the series loss against the Miami Heat. Like that's how long it's been a focal point. So, De'Anthony Melton definitely fits that description. He's, I want to say he's 6'2" without shoes.
Yeah,
I believe I read. So he's probably about like 6'3" and a half in shoes,
with
something
shoes.
like that,
Yep.
6'4" maybe.
Yeah.
6.5 or 6'8.5" foot wingspan. Pretty solid wingspan. There's a lot of like shades of Shake Milton there, except he is better. Like he has
Hmm.
a more complete package to his game. He's a more tenacious defender, better, or rather more consistent shot than Shake.
Hmm.
Uh, just kind of everything that a role player should be in De'Anthony Melton. So I think you're right. I think there's going to be a lot of 3 guard play with him, Maxey, and Harden because the wingspan kind of allows for that.
Hmm.
It's not exactly ideal, but it's a lot better than before when they had Seth Curry on the court, who was just an absolute defensive sieve. So,
And
uh,
and the one thing I want to
yeah,
say about Melton is, as far as we and you mentioned it, as far as the post game press conference, how everybody was talking about mental toughness, physical toughness, toughness. And we'll talk about PJ Tucker later, but and be specifically named somebody like him. And you talk about that dog mentality. I was kind of afraid that, and it looks like we might go down this path, but I was kind of afraid that they would just forget about every other skill set and just want energy and hustle guys, but can't really do anything else. That's
yeah,
not the case with Melton. He
yeah,
can do it. He can provide that, and he can also help you on both sides of the court and really be a player on the offense. We talk about
yeah.
defense and you want somebody to be able to be playable in the playoffs, but you also don't want somebody to be a complete zero on offense. And he's not that. So, I
Oh
think it
yeah.
was a good move.
No, I give it an A+ grade. When you look at Melton's stats, last season, 10.8 points per game, 4.5 rebounds. You talked about his rebounding. What's crazy is like, you look at like 4.5, you're like, all right, well, that's really good for an undersized guard. But when you look at his like per 36, you're looking at 7.1 rebounds per 36, which is like insane for an undersized guard, per 100 possessions, and 9.5 total rebounds. Like that, I mean, that just shows the energy and hustle. He actually knows how to rebound because there's a difference between getting rebounds and knowing how to rebound, right? So knowing how to rebound involves being able to recognize how the ball is going to bounce off the rim, boxing out, all those little IQ and hustle intricacies, and
And
Melton's shown he knows that.
yep. And also a part of the rebounding where if you really take a look sometimes at the game, knowing when your opponent is kind of not boxing out or fake boxing out, where you can come in and swoop in and get an offensive rebound. Those are the
Yeah,
types of plays that you're
yeah.
going
When
to
you
be
can
able to
catch
see
him
him to
sleeping,
make.
absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. He's active in the lanes. He racks up steals. He does just about anything that you want him to do.
And he's a great dunker. I mean, he dunks
Yeah.
the ball hard.
Yeah, he can flush. Yeah.
Who
No.
like when you look at people dunking the ball besides Joel, I mean,
Yeah.
Tobias always lays the ball up or dunks with 2 hands.
Yeah.
Maxey rarely dunks it. When he does, he puts he turns it
Yeah.
over. But Matisse, has
Thibault
dunks.
dunks, but it's like I feel like it's kind of always the same like unathletic off two flush.
Yeah,
Like it's just not it's not like a rim rattle.
when's the last time we seen a guy come down the middle of the lane off a pump fake and flush it with authority, or at least try to
Yeah.
flush it with authority?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, 100% right. So D'Anthony Melton, super excited. People have already, because of course they have, and when Daryl Morey is your president of basketball operations, this happens, but have talked about how he's also on a very tradable contract. That is an asset that is attractive, yes, but I think he's going to be playing for Philadelphia for a while. I think at least as long as Seth Curry did. He's got 2 years left on the deal this season and next season. Can he be used as not just salary filler because he's a valuable player as well? He's only 24 years old. He's not old by any stretch of the imagination. Like, this is just like if you had like a redshirted senior out of the draft. Like this is not that old of a player. So could he end up being traded? Sure, but I think he's going to really be a nice sixth man. Potential at worst seventh man. Sometimes playing with the starters next season. So it's going to be a wide range of role, but I think he's ready for it.
And the one thing last thing I'll say about Melton is you talk about his 10.7 points per game. I think that was in 22 minutes a game. So, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to average 15 or 16 or something like that, but I can anticipate him up in his average a couple of points, maybe 14, because he's going to play. If he played 22 minutes in Memphis with very guard-heavy offense, Bane, Tyus, Morant, Kyle Anderson, even though he's a wing, but he handled the ball a lot, helped play me. If he played in there 22 minutes there, I mean, I could see him playing 28 minutes in Philly. I really can
probably
see
somewhere around there, 26 to 30, somewhere in between there.
Yeah, so
it depends on when, like especially like the postseason. I think his minutes are gonna be pretty obviously your best five, theoretically handle most of the minutes at that point. But this isn't like a situation where they're gonna have to play Harden, both Harden and Maxey like near 48 minutes because they don't have another guard off the bench because now they're doing his name's De'Anthony Melton. So definitely excited about Melton, bringing him on. He's going to be fun. He's just going to be fun. He's going to be good. He's going to be fun. I absolutely can't wait for it. They also brought on 3 other players actually in the draft, right? So they didn't have a single draft pick, but they signed Michael Foster Jr., who played for the G League Ignite, this looks like just a contract. I don't know what portion of it's guaranteed, but it's not a two-way. It's not a summer league invite. They signed him to an undrafted free agent contract. So I think the thought is that he's actually going to make it on the 15. Worst case, he'll take one of the two-way contract spots.
Right.
But definitely interesting there. Julian, it looks like Champagne. Help me out, man. Do you know?
I believe it's.
Are you familiar?
Yes, because his brother plays.
Yeah, Justin.
For Toronto, right? Did I make that up?
Yeah. Julian, forgive me, Julian, if I'm mispronouncing. Julian Champagne, two-way contract, played at St. John's. I mean, great size, solid athlete, solid shooter. There's nothing not to like about this guy. Like, this is exactly what you should do with a two-way contract.
Excited to see him in the summer league. Like,
really. Oh yeah, no, it's going to be great between him, Foster, and then they also signed to a summer league invitation, Aminu Muhammad from Georgetown.
Yes.
6'4", athletic guard, can absolutely shoot. Like, I'm really excited to see him, I'll be honest with you, because I think that he has a chance to push for a two-way as well. If they keep this is assuming that some of the fringe young guys, the Isaiah Joe types, the Charles Bassey types, the reality is they may not be on the roster next season. Not that they'd be cut, but they're going to be potentially involved in a trade here or there. Okay.
Right.
So I think that's part of the reason why Morey kind of brought in these younger players is to kind of replenish those assets, So I think there's a chance that an Aminu Muhammad can take a two-way. Julian's on a two-way. We know that. And that's why I think that Michael Foster Jr. is already potentially on the 15-man roster. So definitely exciting. Overall, like the Melton trade alone, I give it an A+. So it's like an A++ for the whole draft. I mean, what do you think, Justin?
I agree. I definitely, I give it an A+ for the creativity, and specifically for Morey not giving up, quote unquote, multiple assets for this trade. It sounded like, and we'll find out one day if the Sixers actually wind up getting Aaron Gordon or he goes somewhere else or whatever the case may be, right? What the offer was, but it looks like in that deal we would have to give up Danny Green, Matisse, and a 23rd pick, but only giving up the 23rd pick and still having Matisse
Looks like I lost you there for a second, Justin. What were you saying? It said after the 23rd pick.
Yeah, just saying that after the not wasting the assets all in one trade. So they 23rd pick and Danny Green is perfectly fine for that, and that's what allowed me to give it an A+. Because if we would have given up Matisse somehow in the deal as well, you wouldn't have another asset to tack on to maybe another future trade where you're trying to provide space for another free agent guy or maybe possibly trade Tobias. So that's what kind of made it an A+ for me, is that they didn't go barren on the assets, because Matisse is definitely an asset. I mean, Matisse, as much as we harp on him, he is a good player. He is a two-time defensive, all defensive second team player, and he's on a controllable salary. I mean, $4 million. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of guys in the NBA, a lot of teams in the NBA probably want a guy like that on their team.
Yeah, I mean, so the difficulty with Thibault, right, is the fact that you have to pay him after next season. Okay, that's an understandable issue. How do you pay a guy who found trouble making it into the lineup in the playoffs last season? The flip side of that is, well, that's just future. That's their problem. For now, you have a controllable between $4 to $5 million two-time All Defender. That still does have value. You're absolutely right, especially for a team that might have some trouble bringing in a free agent normally. A team like a Portland, a Sacramento, a Washington. I definitely think that there is value for Thibault. So Tom Moore talked about this a little bit, but essentially saying that the Sixers were not going to be giving up something for nothing, right? They're not going to be giving away Thibault and just as a salary dump. That's not how that works. Like Harris, maybe they take some negative value back, but when you factor in the salary they're freeing up, like that would net at least equal, if not positive, in Philadelphia's favor. So don't expect them to move Thibault for a second round pick or something else not satisfactory like that.
Right.
So
Agreed.
We'll see what happens though.
Agreed.
Yeah. So the one thing though that kind of feeds into, and this is why Tom Moore actually brought it up, this is all surrounding the conversation around PJ Tucker, right? So PJ Tucker, obviously one of the top free agent target for the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't think that's ever been questioned, right? That they're looking at him.
Yep.
Joel Embiid said that he wanted PJ Tucker. He said he loves the type of player Tucker is. He said they need that type of player. He said he needs PJ Tucker, right? So Tucker opts out of Miami. I think it was like $7.4 million, something like that. So word quickly spread that now it seems like the expectation in Philadelphia is that they're going to attempt to bring him on 3 years, $30 million. I think that's what Keith Pompey dropped was that figure. So had some people, a little trepidatious and a little reserved about it. When the De'Anthony Melton trade happened, people started saying, well, now it can't happen. And I think Philadelphia kind of wanted to stoke those fires a little bit to kind of avoid any potential tampering charges involved.
Yep.
It's since come out, and Mark Stein was very forward about this. Like even more so than just a few days ago, other teams in the league expect Tucker to Philadelphia 3 years, 30 million. So, what do you think about the possibility of that, the fit of that, the salary numbers? What are your thoughts, Justin?
I mean, first, we want to talk about PJ Tucker, the player. Again, PJ Tucker is that type of hustle, energy, that quote unquote dog player that you're looking for, that this team desperately needs. So he will fit in on that. He is 37 years old, will be 38, I believe, by the start of the season. So he is older. Now, not necessarily. I mean, he put a lot of miles on his body. He did play overseas first. But I mean, if your star player wants him and names him by name, I mean, like this franchise has repeatedly got rid of the guys that Joel has liked, or who was fond of. And this is one guy that they're asking you to go out and try to make happen. You got to try to do it. So that's number one. So The 3 years, 30 million. I think they're saying that the third year is a dummy year, basically being a non-guarantee.
Yeah,
So
a lot like Danny Green's year was.
right. So, you give it 2 years, you give the window 2 years. That means you get 2 years with Harden and Embiid together, and you see how it works out. And, if it doesn't work, his salary would be at a manageable, tradable number, and then that third year will be non-guaranteed. Makes sense. As far as the fit, I'm sorry, go ahead, Zach.
No, I was just gonna say, it could also be like a smaller partial guarantee, for instance, as well. You look at like Eric Bledsoe; it's a $19 million salary hit this season, but the guaranteed amount's only, I think, about $5 million. Kind of a similar situation for Danilo Gallinari as
Yep.
well. So you can do like a partial like 2.5 million or something like that. Maybe Tucker's not willing to do zero guaranteed, but
Right.
that kind of adds like a little more potential, I guess you could call it, realism to the situation and say,
Right.
well, maybe at 40, because he'll be 40 by that time that final year comes around. Maybe he takes that risk and says, oh, well, maybe I can make in, 10 million if they want to keep me, or worst case, they don't want to keep me.
And
I
I
at
get
least get, just about
some.
the veteran minimum, right? About
Yeah.
2.5 million. So
Right. So that's that. Um, as far as fit, it just depends how the roster shakes up. Like if they move Tobias to get PJ Tucker, he would probably slide right into that starting power forward slot. But if not, I don't know if he starts or not. And if he does start, I guess that moves Tobias to the three, which he's not necessarily comfortable in. But I mean, they would just have to make it work. But you know, I'm a firm believer of, where there's smoke, there's fire. We've talked about this with a lot of the rumors in general. We've talked about even the Harden stuff back in the day or whatever you've heard in the past. Like these, teams plant stories and agents plant stories. We know this, but specifically for him, there has to be people talking about it in the circles. Or specifically maybe, PJ is expecting that from them, and maybe his agent put it out to maybe raise the value for other guys like Miami to try to, meet them and, give them 10 million or whatever the case may be. But I do think there's a chance to do it. And I mean, I guess the other way besides trading Tobias would be to dump Furkan and Matisse's salary, and or possibly James Harden as well, taking, opting out and signing a new 3-year deal
yeah,
with maybe signing for like 40 million or 38 million or whatever for the first year, and maybe recoup it on the back end. But it seems like everybody's talking about it, so I wouldn't be surprised if, the day before free agency, we start seeing moves happen, or the day of, right, free agency, we start to see moves happen. But
yeah,
you know, I think there's a realistic. If I would give it a percentage chance, I think there's a 70% chance that
yeah.
PJ Tucker is a 76er come Thursday.
Yeah. No, I'd say at least, and I think a lot of that has to do with all the connections, right? He has the Harden connection, he has the Embiid connection, he has the Daryl Morey connection, right? And kind of like you said, there's multiple ways this can happen. James Harden, this is probably the least likely, can deny his option, decline it, and he can take less money in his first year in Philadelphia. Again, I think that's the least likely option, but it's technically still on the table. They can move, they'd have to move a group of players. The only way I think they do that is if they get a future assets in return. So because you're talking about having to move, it's difficult. It's not just not just moving Thibault, not just moving Korkmaz. You have to move Niang because you have to get you have to lose. I think the numbers Brian Toporek, I believe, said it was 12.3 million is enough to get below the apron, still have room to sign it someone at the vet minimum, and just have some kind of flexibility, because not only do you have to be under the tax, but you have to remain under the tax after you sign the player to the mid-level exception, and then you still want some room to operate as well. So if they work out some kind of deal and they're able to, move on from Thibault, Korkmaz, and Niang and recoup, I would say, at least one first-round pick and a couple seconds out of all that. I mean, maybe that's a possibility. By and large, the most likely scenario is Tobias Harris gets moved. It's not easy. It's not necessarily likely that Harris gets moved, but in any situation that Tucker comes to Philadelphia, it's most likely because they freed up money in a Tobias Harris trade. So we'll see what that looks like. There's a couple potential teams who could be interested. Sacramento's one team who I still think like absolutely call them. They're in win now mode. They have trouble getting free agents. Tobias Harris is better than Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes is a better fit for Philadelphia. Tobias Harris is a flat out better player. So that's the kind of situation that you need to take advantage of if you're Philadelphia. And I think they find a way. I think Daryl Morey finds a way to bring in PJ Tucker because, like you said, that's important to Joel Embiid. That's what Philadelphia needs to focus on right now because they've pissed him off for far too long, making mistake after mistake, bringing in guys to support Ben and not Joel. And he's clearly getting sick of it. So we need to act now. Philadelphia needs to act now before they have a crazy situation on their hands where now Joel Embiid is demanding a trade from Philadelphia.
Exactly. And as far as Tobias goes, I mean, Tobias is a good player. Like, not taking anything from him. And, we talked about this on the live show, draft show. Like, if Tobias was making 29 million, 28 million, would it be such a big thing about as far as how bad of a player he is versus the money he's making?
Yeah.
That wouldn't even be a conversation. Tobias would probably be looked at as a positive asset if he was making like $28 million or something like that. But I mean, just since Tobias has been here, last season he did play like an all-star. I'll give him that. And in the playoffs, he played pretty well. In the Hawks series, he had a couple stinkers, but that game 7, I mean, he tried to do everything he could. He shot like 8 for 24, but like Ben wasn't shooting. All you had was Joel.
Whole team let everybody else down.
Yeah, so it's just like you can't be mad at Tobias. This year he had an up and down season. He was hurt, then he had COVID and stuff like that. But then when he kind of made his transformation in going into the playoffs, trying to really become a 3-and-D wing type player, I think that made a difference. But I just think that at this point right now, Maxey has started to ascend past Tobias, and you can if you can get the proper pieces in place, I think you can make up the 18, 19 points a game that Tobias provides.
Sure.
With other players, and your Maxey's ascension will go where, say Maxey's averaging 17 this season, right? I believe that's what he averaged, 17, something around that range.
17.4, something like that. Yeah.
I think Maxey has a good chance where he can average 21 next season, and then you have some other guys filling the rest of that, right? I think, like you said, the most realistic scenario, but I don't think this is a knock against Tobias. And Tobias,
no,
if you
not
ever
at
see
all.
this, you're a good player, but it's just fit.
It's really it works out better for both sides, if I'm being honest. Like, because we heard that Harris is not exactly satisfied with
his
role that he played last season. So by moving to another team, be that the Clippers, be that the Kings, wherever Washington, wherever that is, like, and I think Washington is, if they move Kuzma, it might be an okay fit. But with Kuzma and Porzingis, it's a terrible fit for him.
Yeah.
But besides the point, like, going to a team where he can have a more on-ball role, that's going to serve him well too. That's what he wants. So I don't listen. I know that he's dealt with a lot in Philadelphia. People have more often than not been fair with him.
Yeah.
I don't see him being the kind of guy to demand a trade. I don't think he's going to fight that hard if they tell him that they're looking at dealing him. So
and I think he sees the writing on the wall. Specifically, and we've talked about this, we've noticed how active he's been on Twitter and social media, just like, let's say, trolling fans when they talk about trading him and stuff like that. It just seems like at this point he's kind of like seen the writing on his wall, and at the end of the day, you can only like live your life and kind of not make fun of the situation, but just be real about it. Like, he sees the writing on the wall. And I remember around the trade deadline, his name came out major a bunch of times. And I guess, he told the media that it was like wearing him out and he didn't really want to talk about it. So, like, again, where there's smoke, there's fire. So Tobias' agent must have told him, which is his dad, by the way, probably told him, like,
exactly.
Listen, you're probably going to get traded. Like, this is probably going to happen.
That's just the likelihood. You got to be prepared for it as a professional,
So, but we'll see what happens. I mean,
we'll see.
The last thing I would say about that is, I mean, we'll see after PJ if the Sixers get PJ Tucker or whatever free agent do it. But I do think that trying the same thing over and over again and it doesn't work,
Mm-hmm.
the definition of insanity. If you
Mm-hmm.
put a different team around, maybe you get a different result. Now they may not win a title, but at least you can say we shuffled the deck to see
Yeah.
if something else will work.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot to be said about trying to build consistency and actually bringing some guys back on a return basis, trying to build something. That being said, those pieces have to fit, and there's just been a clear case of a misfit in Philadelphia. So it's kind of an exception to the rule. Keep your core, which is as of now Harden, Embiid, and Maxey, but building around with ancillary pieces from there, that's not necessarily a problem. Because the last thing that you want is to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Yep.
And like I said earlier, Embiid, demands his way out. We don't want to be some kind of organization where players, we already had Ben Simmons demand out.
Right.
What happens if a player that we actually like tries to demand out? We don't want to be the Brooklyn Nets, and next thing you know, have every single star that comes to Philadelphia doesn't want to be playing for that team anymore.
Yeah.
Like so that's my not so hidden segue into what
Good
we're going
one.
to end on. We got to talk about Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and what the hell is going on in Brooklyn, right?
I don't know.
It's crazy. Like I've never seen. So I was texting a good friend of mine who's a Nets fan, and I sincerely apologized. I was like, I don't even enjoy this, to be frank. Like I'm legitimately sorry for you that this is happening. I will read you his response here. Actually, he said, and it was a little heartbreaking, but he hadn't even heard about the latest news that happened today because he's a hard worker. He didn't know yet. So he was like, "Oh, it got worse." Then I next text, "What in the actual?" The next text, legitimately might have to stop rooting for the Nets after this, like because that was when the news came out that the Brooklyn Nets would prefer to lose Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and then have a year like they had this past year, which is just an insane philosophy to me.
I mean, there's so many angles to this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So wherever you want to get started, we can get started. But there's like so many angles.
You got to start with Kyrie, right? I mean, I feel like that's kind of where all the problems typically start from any team that Kyrie's on is with
Agreed.
Kyrie himself.
And people like James Harden saw the writing on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And he probably saw the writing last year, and it was a
Yeah.
reason why he didn't resign, didn't sign an extension, et cetera, et cetera. Here we are now with James Harden, whatever. But he saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And now nobody can, like James can say, regardless of if Kyrie leaves, if he goes, whatever happens, he can say, I saw this playing out and I don't want to be a part of that. I'd rather be doing something else. Two, Kyrie, like some of my friends were talking about, oh, like, the Nets or whatever, lack of a better story, a S show, like it's just things going on, and I'm just like, they're like, is Kyrie really going to walk away from $36 million? And I'm like, this guy thinks that the earth is shaped like a piece of toast, like, and regardless of whatever you think, like, I'm making a joke about that, but like,
no, of course, yeah,
but like at the end of the day, okay, so here we go, breaking news. Brooklyn Nets from per Shams, Brooklyn Nets star Kyrie Irving is opted into his $37 million player option. Irving is bypassing on multiple opt-in and trade scenarios to fulfill his 4-year commitment to the Nets and Kevin Durant.
You kidding me?
I figured
at that.
Like, look at that. Here we go.
Fulfill his 4-year commitment to the Nets and Kevin Durant, like 4 years from when he came to Brooklyn. Like, because that doesn't say anything about an extension.
Yeah, I'm assuming it'll be. So
you're just talking about fulfilling the original contract.
Correct. That's what it seems like. So maybe next season he'll be leaving, or maybe he does sign it.
Yeah, I mean, so it looks, if I'm reading this correctly, I'm assuming that this means that he has the player option that he's taking, obviously, and this is it. Like, this is the last show. And it
Yes.
sounds like he's kind of gone regardless, if you ask me, because by that phrasing, to fulfill his 4-year commitment to the Nets and Kevin Durant, this sounds like Kyrie Irving trying to be like, a person of principle,
Right. I'm gonna
and
stand on my
that's
word.
kind of all that exactly. That's all that it is, and that's kind of which is I mean, honestly admirable, but that's kind of like part of the mystery of Kyrie Irving, because like players don't do that, like by and large.
And
Not that teams do either, like stand by their players, but
yes.
so it sounds like this is kind of it, and now it also kind of makes sense, right? Because we heard the rumors that he might be willing to take the mid-level exception with the Lakers, right? That's a $31 million difference, right? It makes much more sense that you just wait till the year's over. Russell Westbrook, leaves next season, right? And
And
they
then
just
you
bring
have
him on in to the Lakers then.
and then Kyrie says, I guess this is Shams quoting him, or Shams, sorry. Normal people keep the world going, but those who dare to be different lead us into tomorrow. I've made my decision to opt in. See you all in the fall. A11.
The hell does that mean?
I don't know. And then my thing is like, it's still like weird there. Like, to have this whole thing play out the way it played out, right? All in the media, leverage war. Like, who wants to be a part of that? Like, not only you had the mess
Yeah.
last season with Kyrie and the vaccination, whatever, did a James Harden drama, then the end of the season getting swept, then to a bunch of players who felt like they should have been playing and didn't play, right? Like,
Yeah.
then you have this play out in the media. Then it went from we might not have either superstar to now you have both. It was just like too much drama there. And we're discounting the fact of Ben Simmons.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. No, he's become a background character, on his team.
Like, everything that he's going through, to not playing basketball, being promised that he was going to play for game 3 of the first round series, to his teammates questioning his toughness, to knee and back surgery, to like, it's just like so much going on there. Like, it's still a mess in Brooklyn.
Yeah, and I'm really wondering if they I'm looking more and more into his deal, and I don't see anything about a no trade clause. Um, this could also very well be an opportunity for now Brooklyn to just deal him, just deal him flat out, and so Kyrie can say, "Hey, I stood on my laurels and my principles, and I stood by Brooklyn. They felt it was in their best interest to move me, and so that's what happened, and here we are." So I guess maybe that's a possibility, but
I mean,
it's
sound,
just a weird situation. Like, you really just don't know what's going to happen next in Brooklyn.
especially if something happens in the season, or it doesn't start off
Yeah,
the way they wanted to, or if it's not working with Ben, like,
yeah,
it can just start the whole thing over again,
yeah,
where and then yeah, we'll see.
yeah. So the big thing too is, like, so LeBron's on his deal's up after this year, right? So come next season, I can't even go to next year. Come next season, effectively, they have a little more flexibility in working in a deal that gets Irving paid, the Lakers, that is, gets LeBron paid. They'll probably both be a little flexible on salary at that point.
Yep.
Because to be honest, both of them can make more in endorsements and other things out in LA anyway than they would by their NBA contract.
Yep.
So this is probably destined for LA, but at least for now, we're keeping things Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
An anticlimactic way to for the end of this. I'll tell you
I know
that.
we had so much prepped on, like, give Kevin Durant to the Sixers. Like, listen, I even had Chad Ochocinco. he posted this like an hour ago. He was like, "I'm not saying I'm Woj, but I've been in contact with Kevin Durant, and we will make a decision on what's best for us." Apparently, there's an us between Ochocinco and Kevin Durant. We will make the best decision, what's best for us as far as basketball is concerned. Our number one priority is and always will be winning a championship. And if anyone like is on Twitter, like you've been noticing, Ochocinco's been like Philly centric lately, been all about Philadelphia. So of course that like sent like wavelengths, like for the people who kind of took it more seriously than they should have. Like, oh, is he coming to the Sixers? Is Kevin Durant coming to Philadelphia? I mean, all that's just like all that fun's all out the window now at this point, because I mean, you may still see a trade, but I think that Durant would at least wait another year at this point, right?
Yeah, it was funny. Jerome Weitzman, out of Fox Sports, he basically said, I guess hearing and being informed that there's no sign and trade market for you, and then grabbing money on the table is daring to be different. Like, it's true. Nobody wanted that headache. He's
Yeah,
burned bridges everywhere he's been,
yeah.
and even
Well,
burned
he
bridges
dropped
with
that list
LeBron.
of 6 teams that he'd be interested in. Philadelphia, Clippers, Lakers, Mavericks, Heat. I'm forgetting somebody, but he dropped that list of 6 teams. Only team that was interested was the Lakers.
And of course, they're interested in everybody.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, because they're even worse off than Brooklyn. Like
They
so
were trying to go after
they're
Jeremy Grant. Like,
yeah, I know. So and then it may have even been Jeannie Buss who spread that rumor about Kyrie taking the mid-level exception, because that never really made any. They would have to have some kind of special like side pair, under the books, uh, paid sponsorship for Irving to make up for that 30 million there for him to take that loss. But I mean, just absolutely insane, that entire series of events. But yeah, that's an anticlimactic ending. But what can I say? That's our show. That's what we had for you today. I hate that we end on this note. If I vamp for a little bit, maybe Jake Fisher breaks the PJ Tucker to the Sixers news. We'll
yeah.
see what happens. And no, he hasn't done it. Okay, yeah. So that's our show for today. Do you have any parting thoughts, Justin, on anything that we talked about, or this new crazy development in the Kyrie Irving saga?
No, I'm just interested to see how this net, like just how Brooklyn plays out, and then just like free agency in general. Like, they promised me trades, and more trades on draft night. We got nothing. So now it's like, are the trades going to happen before free agency, right before 6 o'clock? So sign the trades can happen. Like, it's just like so many things that like kind of interest me. So
Yeah.
I'm just gearing up for Thursday, and I mean, it could or could not be anticlimactic, but I will say, I mean, it's random to be quoting Draymond, but he talked about how little edge and around the margins create champions, and I just
Yeah.
want to see what the Sixers do around the margins.
Yeah. No, I've been looking at some of like the minimum, free agent options, stuff like that, and some of the former Rockets who could be joining Philadelphia on some of these smaller deals. And I'll tell you, I'm ready for Ben McLemore and Daniel House. It's like, and I'm only half kidding. Like, that's the point that I'm at, is like, they're not great, but they're better than what we've had. So you know, I think that plus a nice, not so new PJ Tucker, that's not
Yeah,
bad. When you factor that in, plus whatever you get back from the likely Harris deal, yeah, it's going to be marketable change. And this
yep,
team, there is a way to flip this team going forward. So
yep.
I'm excited. I think you should be excited. Justin, you sound excited too. So we'll see. Wait until Thursday. Maybe we'll do a free agency primer a little later this week, right before free agency, or maybe we'll just do like a day one results or something like that thereafter. But
Yep.
either way, exciting stuff. Kyrie Irving stuff, kind of sickening, kind of is what it is. But not our city, not our problem. That's what I like to say. So
Yep.
for now, it's been myself, Zach Ciavolella at Zach Chavo NBA, with, of course, Justin, as always, at Will Work for Sneaks. And we just hit you with the baseline scoop.
Peace.